Hello students, welcome to yet another lecture of your biology session with a new and a very interesting topic. So in the last lecture we talked about your nervous system. So today we're going to talk about how your synapses and your reflexes work in the body. So talking about the first thing, let's look at the GIF. This is exactly how your nervous system works, and this is exactly how your neurons will transfer the impulses from one neuron to another. Look at the speed, how fast that is. That is exactly, we're going to understand how this is so fast. So your neurons transmit information which is very quick to and from your brain. To or from your brain means, for example, somebody hit you, the nervous system is going to detect the system and all the impulses are going to get to your brain, then back to your muscles so that they can contract and you can react accordingly. And your brain quickly decides how to respond to that stimuli. So we're talking about to and from, but we also need to talk about the brain works so fast that within microseconds it understands what to do with that stimuli. For example, you must have seen that sometimes what happens is that you're very careless and you're not actually into the zone, and you sometimes touch something that's really hot, and as soon as you do touch it, irrespective of if you're looking at that thing that is hot or you're not, you feel it and you retrieve your hand back. So it doesn't even make you realize that it was hot. I mean, your hand is not exactly burnt. You retrieve it before it was burned. So this is exactly how fast your brain works. The impulses went to the brain decided to retrieve your hand back, they came to the muscles contracted. Within seconds, you do not even realize it. Sometimes what happens is, you realize that thing was hot after that you've retrieved your hand back. But these reflexes that we have in our body are even quicker. The reflex that I just gave you an example of. The one that you realize that something is hot after retrieving your hand back from that surface. So let's talk about what is synapses. In the last lecture, I did tell you a little about it. So synapses is this. Synapses is where there's nerve ending of one neuron and the receiver end of the second neuron. This space between that is known as synapses. So synapses is the connection between two neurons. The nerve signals is transferred by chemical which diffuses or moves along these gaps. So they're going to jump the system. These chemicals will be jumping the system, entering the next neuron, transferring into themselves, moving along the length of that neuron, then moving into the next one. Like you see in here, the other one, the upper one, will send some signals, the second one will receive it, and then continue with the third and fourth and the fifth. So n number of neurons can be present. These chemicals then set off a electrical signal in the new or your next neuron. What is this exactly talking about? For say, I'm drawing, this is your, I'm drawing it smaller because I need two neurons. So this is your nerve ending. Then you have the other nerve cell, the body, and the nerve ending, and so on. So you can have another one because I have space. So like this, right? So if you see, I have not joined the nerve endings of one with the body of the other. Why? Because that is where synapses is. Let me draw synapses a little bigger so you do not forget that there's always space between two neurons. So if you zoom this part in like this, you're going to see the nerve ending of one and dendrite of the other. Again another here and here, like this. And this distance is known as synapse or synapses as you say it. So what's going to happen? This is going to send signals because there's a gap here. They're going to, because in the last lecture we talked about how these are electrical impulses that are getting transferred in the neuron. So these electrical impulses are going to turn themselves into chemicals so that they can jump the synapse. Once that is done, again your electrical impulse will start. Then again in this section there will be chemical signals and then your impulse which is electrical. So these circles are going to be chemicals while these arrows are your electrical impulses. So there are two types of impulses that you see in your connection of neurons. Talking about your reflexes help prevent injuries. Like I said, sometimes you realize that you touched something hot, right after that you retrieved your hand back. So your brain is working so fast that it can actually save your body or your system from getting injured or burned for that matter. So these reflexes are going to be rapid, they're going to be automatic, and they does not involve any other conscious part of the brain, which is exactly why the conscious part of the brain understands it a little later that, oh, I have been saved from the burn, and that can reduce the chances of being injured. So if your brain works with the conscious part would have to realize that it's hot. Once it does, that is when your body is going to react. So it's going to be a little slower if we involve our conscious brain. So what we instead did, we instead got involved with the unconscious part of the brain, which is like you touch it, your brain sends the signal and you retrieve your hand back without even telling the conscious part of your brain. This is it's a very classic example. For example, if someone shines bright light in your eye, your pupil will automatically get smaller so that the less light can enter. Look at the diagram, or the GIF as you call it. So the pupil of the eye is contracting. In this, okay, let me draw it. So if I draw an eye, this eye, I am going to draw one with the normal pupil. So this has a normal pupil. So for say this. So entire this region is going to receive light from the environment. So if I draw the eye simultaneously in the like this, I told you this is retina. And because my pupil is expanded, it is, completely open. A lot, for say this is my pupil, a lot of light is going to enter my eye. All of this is going to stimulate certain eye receptors that are going to then work my brain out and tell me what I'm looking at. But if somebody throws a lot of light in your eye, what will happen? This is your eye, and your pupil will be this small, like this. In the GIF, you saw how it's going to contract itself. So this is my pupil. So what will happen again, if I look at the diagram from this side, the retina is still here in the background, and this is my pupil now, which is very, very small. So imagine the amount of light that can actually enter the circle, the pupil. Whatever enters the pupil is the one that you'll be able to see. And because the pupil is so small, a lot lesser light would enter your eye. So a lot lesser brain cells will be stimulated because of your receptors that are present in your eye. So this is the difference. So you see a lot less, and this will stop getting damaged. For example, this is actually an exercise that a lot of doctors do to see how the body is responding, if the body is responding. If somebody throws light at your eye and your pupil does not contract, doctors actually call it, this is like the first sign of what doctor call that the person has died, because it stopped reacting to the light that has been thrown at its pupil. So these are the things that we see. These are the reflexes that our body has, irrespective of if we sense them or not. For example, you do not actually consciously contract your eye. Instead, you actually do this. So you try to contract your eye, the entire eye, and not the pupil. So you try to contract the eyelid and the lower region of your cheek so that it can get a little up like this. So this is a different contraction of muscles. When we're talking about pupil, you do not control if your pupil expand or contract, right? Another thing, if you get a shock, your body releases the hormone adrenal automatically, and if it does not wait for you to decide if you got shocked. For example, again, same thing, if you put your hand, wet hands around your electrical system, you retrieve your hand back within microseconds. And after that you're done with it, that is when you realize, oh, I was shocked. So this is what your brain is doing. Your brain is protecting your body from actually realizing what is happening with it. The passage of the information in the reflexes from the receptor, receiving part, effector, the effective part that is going to contract, is known as your reflex arc. So reflex arc is the entire diagram that we saw. This, so your muscles are going to, for example, you received certain stimuli here, heat, pain, needle, anything, right? Even if it's a bee sting, anything. Your pain receptors will send your sensory neurons to your brain. Your brain will tell what to do. Your motor neurons will bring them back. Your muscles will contract around the area. The entire cycle that actually happened is your reflex arc. So the reflex arc goes through the central nervous system. The neurons in the arc goes through the spinal cord and the unconscious part of the brain, which means your conscious part of the brain is never involved when we're talking about a reflex arc. Your reflex arc is so quick that it goes and comes back within microseconds, and it does not involve any parts of your brain that are conscious to understand what is exactly happening with the body. Look at the speed again. A lot of speed is there. The reflex arc goes through the central nervous system. When the stimuli, your whatever is changed in your environment, whether it be heat, whether it be a bee sting, whether it be somebody hitting you, whether it be a needle, or it might as well be you hitting yourself with the furniture. Like, this is something that happens every day with a lot of people. So if you hit yourself into the furniture one day, your reflex is still going to be there. So we're going to take an example of a painful bee sting. That is going to be detected by your receptors for wherever your bee has been, wherever the bee sting you, for example, your arm, your hand, your palm, your anywhere, whether it be your shoulders, any part of the body. Once that is done, your receptors will catch it that, okay, something has happened. Then these impulses will be sent along the sensory neurons. Sensory neurons will take it to the CNS. Again, your CNS is your brain. So from sensory neurons, there is another thing which is known as your relay neurons. Relay neurons are present around the your spinal cord. So sensory neurons are present in your arm. For say, if I'm talking about a bee sting on your palm or the back of your hand, so sensory neurons will take it to your relay neurons. Then relay neurons in your spinal cord and around your spinal cord are going to take them to the central nervous system, which is your brain. When the impulses reach a synapse, which is in between your sensory neurons and a relay neuron, they trigger chemicals to be released from one to the other. These chemicals cause the impulses to be sent along the relay neurons. This is like relay neurons. Look at the chemical impulses, whoosh, and then they're going to travel, then whoosh. So there's a jump from the synapse. When the impulses are reached, the synapses between the relay neuron and the motor neuron do the same thing. When the nervous system has told you what to do with it, they're going to come back and tell you again how to respond. These chemicals will be released and causes the impulse to be sent along your motor neurons. When they're coming back, relay neurons will again start jumping from one neuron to other, giving signals to your motor neurons, which will tell your muscles to contract. So the impulses then travel along the motor neuron to the effector, which is usually a muscle. If we're talking about a bee sting, it is definitely going to be a muscle. And then muscle contracts and move your hand away from the bee. And because you don't have to think about these responses, they take a lot lesser time and the reflexes are a lot faster than your normal responses. For example, when somebody asks you something, for say, I ask you, what did you eat? You're going to stop for a second and think about it. But when a bee stings you, you do not stop and think about what to do with it. You just do it. So this is how your muscles are going to retrieve back faster, right? So this is what is happening. So always remember that your brain knows better than you do, irrespective of if your brain is actually a part of you, right? So this is what is happening in your brain, and this is how your nerves are, transferring the information from your receptor muscles, which are actually receiving the stimuli, to their effector muscles, which are reacting on your stimuli. So I hope you've understood the concept. I'll see you in the next lecture talking about a new topic. Till then, bye-bye, take care.